How's it
Yo,
going?
what's going on?
My name is Chris.
Yo, my name is Ian, and you guys are here watching the One Up game.
Your mic is cutting in and out.
Okay, leaning forward. How's it going today, everybody? How you doing today, Chris?
Dude, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. It's been raining like
Yeah.
crazy. That's life.
Okay. Yeah, it's
So,
the sunshine state, so
yep,
it is what it is.
yep. We are the Sunshine State and also the lightning capital of the world.
Yeah,
It's incredible what you can get up to. Hey, do you know there are some games
absolutely.
coming out soon?
There are some games coming out soon. It's not really that exciting of a
Yeah, not
game.
like a.
I guess with the Fourth of July week and everything, their deadlines and stuff aren't really pretty much happening.
Yeah,
But looks like we got some games coming out tomorrow, though.
we do. If you're a fan of Red Faction Guerrilla, the remastered version, is coming out on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. Um, have you played Red Faction?
I mean, I'm familiar with it. I haven't played it.
Yeah, about the same here. I know it's a first-person shooter. I might have played, I don't know, 10 minutes of, I think the first one actually. In any
Yeah.
case, we can move on from there to a game called Runbow, which is releasing for the PS4 and Switch. It's already out on PC, but that's coming out on the 3rd as well, which is tomorrow. Um,
Yep.
it's a little,
I'm actually
very
pretty stoked for
colorful
it.
platformer. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm actually pretty stoked for it. Anything I can is going to be a-okay in my book. And this is definitely it's got some good reviews. I think it's got like an 8 out of 10 on like Metacritic or whatever it is, or one of whatever the review sites are.
sure,
So yeah, it's pretty fun from what I hear. So I'll probably pick it up and add it to my Switch collection.
sweet.
Yeah. I know on Thursday, the day after the 4th of July, the Warhammer 40K Inquisitor Martyr game is going to be finally released for Xbox One. It had a small delay in its release, but it will be out this week,
Yeah,
and
I
it'll
got
be
there.
nice.
Can I just say, by the
Yeah.
way, what a terrible name for a game. Like, could you name it in a more complex way? It's
Uh,
Warhammer 40K.
no.
All right, I'm with you. I'm there. I like Warhammer games. Inquisitor. Okay, it's like a sub genre or like sub branch of games, and then inside of Inquisitor, it's Martyr. But they haven't established the Inquisitor branch. They just went straight into like a sub title. I don't know.
Right.
I thought it was weird.
Eh.
Oh well. So, I have been playing a ton of games this week. Really, mostly just the like past week, but more or less the weekend. Um, but I guess we'll start with this one. Over the course of my streaming the past week, I played a little bit of Elite Dangerous, just continuing that journey. But I was also playing Ori and the Blind Forest, which I have never
Okay.
played before. So that's been
And
a
thoughts?
yeah. I do have some thoughts. I th- I think it's a beautiful game that the closer you look at it, the less good it is. I enjoy the hell out of it as long as I'm not paying really close attention to it, and I think that's okay. It just has a lot of little annoyances that I mean it is what it is. I mean you know that I love Metroidvania games, so I'm going to
Yeah.
enjoy this kind of no matter what. But I don't know. I mean, if you go back and watch my VODs, you'll see I'm just like half of the time I'm just aggravated playing that game, and it's not like part of me is just like I started on hard mode, so of course the enemies get to kill you a lot, but it's not like
Yeah.
I'm upset about the enemies killing you because I understand that, like I know why I died. There's just some times when like things don't work like they're supposed to, like the wall jumping doesn't always actually happen, or um, your little boost thing like doesn't actually work much, or the fact that in order to upgrade my primary attack, I have to upgrade my secondary attack 3 times because they're just in a straightforward branch that I can't do anything with. So, and I never use that explosion attack that you get. I never freaking use it unless there's like something that you have to specifically explode. But I had to put 3 upgrades into it before I could upgrade my attack that I use all the time. So,
Okay.
I
So
mean, it
you
is
just
what it
don't
is.
like that you don't have the option to choose what you want to upgrade when you upgrade.
One of a few things, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking about it, but I would say it's an excellent
Okay.
game as long as you're not paying really close attention. Um,
Okay.
I've also been playing a good. Go ahead. What?
I was gonna say, like, it's been out for a couple of years now. I think it's been out for like 3 years, so I think it's been getting gotten amazing reviews. So
Oh yeah,
give everyone else give it a look and see what you think about it.
Yeah. So I've also been playing, excuse me, Final Fantasy XII: The Zodiac Age, which is just a remaster, upgraded version of Final Fantasy XII for the PC, and I guess it's on PS3 and consoles and such. But yeah, they did a few things to that game that's really improved it a lot. Did you play Final Fantasy XII?
Yes, I did play through Final Fantasy XII.
Okay.
I think I played pretty much every except for 15. I think I played 11.
You're cutting in and out again.
Okay. I'm going to reboot my voice meter. So
okay. I'll just talk about this really quickly while you're doing that. So one of the things that you may have noticed in the original FF12 is that all of your spell casting was put into a queue. The PS2 didn't have enough system resource to show more than one spell being cast at a time. And so the end result of that and how they corrected it is that if you had 3 characters lined up to cast the spell and their action meters were all full and like they were ready to go, you would have one character would cast Cure, and then another character would cast Fire, and then another character would cast their Summon or whatever. Even though they were already at the same time to cast, and you had to like wait for that action queue to go off, and it could get you killed. It was one of those things that you had to plan for, and it was based on a system restriction. And in the new version, they have not... they fixed that. So I guess they upgraded that. They removed that limitation. So now you can actually have multiple spells going simultaneously, and that really helps the flow of combat because it's not something you'd notice at the beginning of the game because you typically aren't casting a bunch of spells at once. But like mid to late game, you really start noticing when you can't get 2 cures off simultaneously to keep somebody alive. So it's one of those nice little upgrades.
Okay. Yeah. I know some games that I've been playing. I finally beat the story for Mario Tennis Aces the other day.
Yeah, how was that?
It was pretty good. I mean, like the story was cute. Traveling around the world, trying to fight an evil tennis racket that wants to take over the world. It's very Super Mario like, and it's it's highly enjoyable. The tournament feature is really nice. Had some really tough opponents over the course of the week, but started to finally gain some points in the tournament system.
Okay.
I'll probably keep playing it for a couple more weeks, and then it'll probably hit the shelf, and I won't touch it for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you been playing anything else, or I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. Yeah, I'm happy to hear it. Like I said, I played a bunch of games this week. I also have been playing a little bit of The Division. I don't think it's as bad as people think, like to say it is. I also don't think it's as good as some people think it is. It's a solid, like, in my book, it's a solid 5. It's a shooter. And it has some RPG aspects, and it's kind of bullet spongy, and it's like a little bit of a looter shooter, which, it's fine. It's not really like my cup of tea. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's a game. Okay. I probably won't play it again, but it was on Steam sale, and I got it for like $12, and I was like, all right.
Hey, give it a go.
Yeah. And then the last thing I've been playing is something we'll touch on a little bit later, but I played Far Lone Sales, which is a game we talked about a couple weeks ago on the podcast as an upcoming game. So we'll get into that one a little bit later, but suffice to say it was good.
Okay. Very cool. I know I spent a good 2 hours last night, probably between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Finishing up the Octopath Traveler demo.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited about it. It's a Square Enix game, so they're gonna do a good job with the story.
Yeah.
It's got that old Final Fantasy like NES kind of feel to it. It's got it's a turn-based RPG. So it's taking a step away from the action RPG. Yeah. But where it really shines is how they tell the story. There's 8 different characters that you're going to end up dealing with across, the whole game. They each have their own story. The dialogue is super cool in that it's very easy to keep up with. It's not a very, very wordy game.
Okay.
And there's voice acting in the most important parts.
Good.
So there will be some dialogue that you just have to read, and then there will be some dialogue that you can read, and there will also be voice involved, and it's done very well. So I'm really excited about it. It's got the Final Fantasy vibe that I think is real cool. It may be a little bit on the easier side when it comes out, because they kind of, I don't know if this is just a demo thing or what have you, but like as you have your encounters and your random encounters, when you come across an attack that is or if you come across a damage type that the creature is vulnerable to, it will let you know in big giant letters and give an icon above its head, letting you know that, like, oh, it's weak to this. So, it's, as a hardcore RPG guy, like, I like to be able to find that information out on its own, but not have it like just presented in front of me.
Sure.
So, that was kind of a turnoff for me. But other than that, I think it's going to be a super solid game. The one thing, we'll see how they tie all the stories together. That's where my biggest concern is, because in the demo it was very, very much like here are your 8 characters, and then you kind of play through each of their story. Like you finish the story of one, then you go pick up another character, and you can do it in whatever order you want. But then when you get to that character, it kind of lays out like, oh, this would have been the story that you would have picked if you would have picked this character first, and then you watch that whole thing play out.
Okay. And
then you do his mission or her mission, and go on and so forth. I would say it is at times kind of vulgar. With the characters that I got to, there was some fairly foul language that I haven't seen from Square Enix before. No F-bombs per se. There was no F-bombs, but there were some. It was definitely a heavy PG-13.
Okay.
So
like nothing you've seen in an RPG before, but how would you say it compares to something like, say, Life is Strange, which did not shy away from cursing in any way?
I wouldn't say it was as bad. Well, it wasn't as in depth as that was, but it was done definitely in a good way to help progress characters and story. I was just kind of taken aback because it's not something you expect Square Enix to do,
right?
Especially in a fantasy setting role playing game, which is like their wheelhouse. They kind of, I don't even think that's ever been a thing that they've done. So just to see a couple of words dropped, I was like, oh, okay. And I think, if I can't remember because it was really late, but I think those were actually in the voice dialogue as well. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting. And if you got the only other game I played this week, if you got the chance to watch my stream the other day,
I did.
I actually got online and streamed. I got back into Overwatch. I reinstalled Overwatch. Haven't played in probably about 5 or 6 months. Did my placement matches for this season of competitive. Came in at just under 2,000, just under gold. So I got a little bit of learning to do and a little bit of catching up to do. But I think the goal for me this year season is to maybe hit platinum. Sure. And I feel like I could probably get to that point. So nice. We'll see. With the new character Wrecking Ball, I felt obligated to get back into it because it was that kind of character is really like right on my alley.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
if you guys don't know, Wrecking Ball is the new hamster that that Overwatch has announced. It is a hamster inside of a giant ball, and it can swing around and gain speed and knock things around. It's a tank. It looks super, super fun. So if you don't know anything about Overwatch, you should, because the story is amazing. Other than that, I think that's really about it for everything that I've been playing this week.
Cool. Well, then let's transition into our gaming news segment.
Sure.
First thing on the docket we have is, so you know me, I like talking about fan-made campaigns. I love it when modding communities get together and do cool and interesting things. So there's a mod coming out for the original System Shock. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
The first one. Called System Shock Rewired. It is a new fan-made campaign. Just replaces the whole campaign. So work on this mod started something like 4-ish months ago or so. back just around when the company that now owns the rights to System Shock, they're called Night Dive Studios. They're working on a remake of the original, and they're working on like a new game too. But they released the source code for System Shock.
Right.
And so these modders got a hold of the code and they wrote just a new campaign for it. So there it is, and it's out right now. You can go play it.
Yeah. Nice.
Aside from
I
that,
mean, System Shock's like what, like 25 years old at this point. Like it was
released in
what,
'94, so it's 24 years old. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always exciting when like a game like that gets a breath of new life back interested into it. So, maybe who knows, in a year or two we might see another System Shock game.
Yeah.
If people are this just shows that the community's asking for one. So that's super cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I know you brought this up a little bit earlier.
I did, yeah. We were just sitting around having a discussion before we got on here, but
yeah.
So I noticed this, and I thought this was a very eyebrow-raising moment. So the International Olympic Committee and the Global Association of International Sports Federations will this month, on July 21st, host the first ever esports forum, where they will be talking about the possibility of including esports in the Olympic Games. So far there's really not a lot of information about it aside from that, but they have announced the first few panels that they will have. The first is called The World of Esports. The second is What Defines the Olympic Movement. And the third one, which I thought was kind of interesting to bring into this discussion, was Gender Equality in All Sports. So it's not super clear to me if this forum is specifically and only about esports, or if this is something that they want to address and kind of like sneak it in there too. But I thought it was interesting because we had a short discussion about this, and we could talk about this for hours and never come to a conclusive answer and never touch everything to go with it. But I thought it was interesting that they're including gender equality in talks about esports, because it still is a very large majority of players are male in video games, and it's just kind of always been that way for generally assigned nerdy things. Like D&D is still kind of that way. I don't know if tabletop games are still that way, like just general board games. I think that's a pretty mixed community at this point.
I think it's a pretty mixed crowd at this point. Yeah.
But
I remember when I went up to when I was on the road a couple of years back, I was in Saskatoon, and we had the night off in Saskatoon, and I had found a board game night that they were doing at a local bar. And I would say it was about 70% female and 30% male when I showed up there.
Huh.
I had a great time. Played some games I've never played before. I still keep in contact with a bunch of the people that were up there that brought me into play. So I thought that was super cool. But yeah, I definitely think that tabletop gaming is definitely kind of caught up in the gender battle role assignment. I don't know.
I don't know. We were talking about this. I'll just bring it up super briefly. I think a lot of the discrepancy between the numbers is just because of what people want. I remember watching it wasn't an interview. It was some type of a talk about just like high up the ladder in corporate environments. There aren't a lot of female like top executive CEOs and that kind of thing. And one of the things that was brought up in that talk, and I'm skipping a lot of details, so don't just like shoot me in the face for all this, but like one of the things that was talked about was that lifestyle is extremely demanding. Like if your client in Japan calls you at 3:00 in the morning and demands you solve his problem right there, you have to drop what you're doing and go solve that problem. And if you don't, there's some aggressive intern looking to take your place, and who will do it. So it's just one of those like really demanding type of positions, and I guess it's just he was talking about how men and women kind of want different things, and that it's just women didn't want to do it, so they just wouldn't do it. And then I don't know, I'm kind of veering off track here, but to bring it back home, I think the discrepancy is that I'll just leave it with this postulation. I'll just postulate something quickly. Maybe tabletop games have closed the gap so swiftly because one, they've been around for significantly longer than video games have, and two, because you're face to face when you're playing them, as opposed to very many video games which how they used to have multiplayer on the same console or computer or whatever now require you to be online, and that necessitates most people to be at home to do it. And I think to not offensively generalize, I think women are more interested in social gathering than men are in general.
I think that's a fair assessment. But to get back on the topic,
back on track
in regards to esports and the Olympics. I think it's an interesting discussion to have. But I'm very much on the side of, I feel like the Olympics are a physical competition, where I guess you can make the argument that esports are hand-eye coordination and reaction time along the lines of like how archery would be like hand-eye coordination and stuff. But I feel like there needs to be some kind of physicality involved in your Olympic competition, because the Olympics have always been touted as these are the peak athletes in their field, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I find it difficult personally to identify a pro esports gamer as a physical athlete. I know they go through these days. They're going through a lot more rigorous training. They're staying in a house that's provided by a sponsor. They're putting the time and the effort in, just like any other professional.
Yeah.
But I think it's just something in my own head that can't get past. Like, you think of the Olympics and you think of like the decathlon. You think of like people who run the hurdles. You think of winter sports. You think of cross country skiers. You think of, judo competitions and fencing. Like, you think of all these different physical activities. And also some of them are, the majority of them are all individual based. I mean, you do get things like the bobsled or the 2-man luge and the where you pass the baton off, the relay races and stuff. But I don't know. It'll be an interesting conversation to have to see where people really consider esports and esport pro gamers as athletes.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think about this in the same way I think of like, and I legitimately don't know this, is chess an Olympic sport?
I do not believe chess.
I don't believe that it is. And I think about that in kind of the same way. Like, chess requires a lot of mental acuity, right? And archery requires some physical strength and accuracy. And I don't know. Like, I guess we could go with the argument that, the Olympics has always been a very physical sort of thing. But at the same time, like, I don't actually care one way or the other whether or not esports becomes an Olympic sport. I mean, it would be interesting, but I mean, I would be okay if this never happened. Like, because even as an avid gamer myself, like, I don't really associate with or watch the Olympics. So if anything, it's a little bit weird that they're doing this, because what am I gonna relate with the rest of the people watching the Olympics? Because I mean, if you put me in a room, like if I now start watching the Olympics and I start watching Olympic esports, and then you put me in the room with somebody who is watching, Olympic soccer or something, right? We're still not going to be able to have a conversation because we didn't watch the same type of thing. But if you put somebody who watched, say, Olympic tennis in the same room with somebody who watched Olympic football, then great. They might be able to connect on some level, but it would take a lot more effort on the side of the person playing video games to connect with the person who was watching football, right?
Yeah,
so, I mean, it's.
I'll have you know that chess was played as an exhibition sport in the 2000 Summer Olympics.
Okay.
And there has been an application for chess to be included as a sport at the 2020 Games in Tokyo.
Interesting. Okay.
So that'll be chess is a recognized sport by the International Olympic Committee. So. Who knows? There may be some chess in the Olympic future here. So that
for sure. And that kind of begs the question too. If since chess is recognized as an official sport, esports is not really a sport. It's a category of, competitive video games. Do you then have to recognize, okay, so Dota is a sport, but I don't know, League of Legends isn't? Or
like speedrunning.
to...
Where would speedrunning fall in? Would speedrunning be a sport at that point as well?
If you're going to start putting games in as sports, I would put speedrunning as a definite sport. I mean, that requires time, practice, and a lot of effort, and pretty good memory, and you have to be pretty quick on your controller to get some of that stuff done. So, I mean, if we're going to start categorizing things as sports in the video game world, I would think speedrunning is most certainly an esport.
Okay.
I think it's played less competitively, but I would certainly say it's a type of sport. Esport, anyway.
Yeah. Well, speaking about speedrunners, Summer Games Done Quick, we talked about it last week. It ended the other day. It ended on late Sunday morning, or early Sunday morning, late Saturday night.
Yeah, it was like 3 a.m. or so in Eastern time when it ended.
Yeah, they raised a new record for this for their event. It was over $2.1 million for Doctors Without Borders.
Yeah,
I think it was like $2,122,000 or something or other like that.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful thing. Between that and like the St. Jude's Guardian event that's coming up in the next week or so, it'll be interesting to see how much they raise. I think they're going to probably raise about $1 million. So it's going to be a lot of money that video games raised for charity over the next couple of weeks. And it's good to see that it starts off with Doctors Without Borders getting a large chunk of cashola.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fantastic that people come together that take video games, something that's not typically associated with benefiting anyone except for the person doing it, and they turn it into something that just helps the world in general. Like, that's awesome. I'm as a speedrunner myself, I am personally proud to be part of a community of people that really helps that way, which is, I mean, that's awesome.
Very cool.
Speaking of games that help nobody except for themselves, so Robert Space Industries has recently released Star Citizen Alpha 3.2. The next major release. It includes mining, and now you can party with your friends and share ships. It's got some new weapons, fixed some bugs, and it still doesn't have a release date. So
okay, I mean they're an Alpha 3.2. That should
3.
tell you. 2. Yeah, that should tell you what's going on.
When is the last time you found an alpha that was even above 1 point anything?
Anything, right? I don't know. Couldn't tell you.
They're on the third major version of an alpha. It's the game will never be complete.
I guess Star Citizen then.
And the last thing to mention, remember years ago when they talked about the Halo movie that never happened?
Yeah.
Well,
there was a couple of like made-for-TV movies.
Yeah, and there's like a Netflix thing you can watch. It's I forget what it's called, ODST something maybe. But officially, for the first time ever, a big production studio will have their hands on Halo. Showtime has ordered 10 episodes for the first season of a Halo series.
Okay.
So,
who would you like to be seen cast as Master Chief?
If they even include Master Chief. I think it could be a really...
You gotta have
you'd think that, but there are a lot of interesting things to tell in the Halo universe. I think, honestly, if they did a story about Jacob Keyes and his relationship to his daughter Miranda, and if they included some of early history Halo, like the beginning half, I would say, of the Fall of Reach, like that kind of storyline, where you just include the Keyes family, include Dr. Halsey, include how Sergeant Johnson was the first. He was part of the team. He was part of the first team to ever survive an encounter with the Covenant. Just cover all that stuff. It could be really interesting. I mean, you don't even have to tell a contiguous 10-part story, which they will because that's where TV is these days. But I mean, you could tell 10 individual plot points from that universe that are just from the early days, and you'd lock down some really interesting content. So,
all right. But who would you cast as Master Chief? That was my question.
Was your question? All right. I don't know enough. Let me see. Okay, what do I know Master Chief looks like? Master Chief is, I know he's white. I know he's, as an adult, he's tall. He's like I think he stands like 7.5 feet tall. So you'd have to cast a
Right,
tall
which
person if you're going for accuracy. Um,
well, you don't necessarily have to cast a tall person. You can make it happen. With somebody smaller, you just do camera tricks.
yeah, I suppose you could. Man, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm not a casting director. I'm not good at this.
I'd go with Jean-Claude Van Damme. He
Jean-Claude
doesn't
Van
have to
Damme.
talk. Doesn't have to talk. You don't see him
Oh, you
without
know
the helmet
what?
on.
You know who I would cast? What's the guy's name? He was McCoy in the new Star Treks. He played Dredd in the new movie. Um, he's a fairly famous actor. You would know him as soon as you saw him. Um,
Um, I should do this. Not Carl Urban.
Carl Urban. That's him. I would cast Carl Urban. I like him.
Yeah, I can see that.
He's got a gruff voice when he wants to, and
Yeah,
just based on solely his performance in Dredd, I think he would make an excellent Master Chief.
yeah.
Because I mean, if it's gonna be Master Chief, it's mostly gonna be him in the armor anyway. And in Dredd, he was
Right.
mostly in his armor,
In the
and he
armor,
had very
yeah.
limited lines in Dredd. And Chief is a very, he doesn't speak except when he needs to, and it's always very direct
Yeah.
and to the point. Like that, I could see that working him pretty well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's not a bad choice. You said you can't be a casting director. I think you. nailed that one
I
on the head.
couldn't. I don't know enough people. Oh man. You know what else I'm not good at?
What?
Art. Like, I have no creative power in me at all except for programming. So I'm good at
Which is
logic, but
art
I'm not good at art.
Well,
But I'm good at being an art critic.
there you go.
And as is tradition with everyone. And I would like to say this though: there are a few video games that qualify, I think, as art. I think there are probably many that qualify as art. But
Yeah, for sure.
what do you say?
I can name a whole bunch off the top of my head. I know we kind of put together a small list that we'll make a rundown through.
Yeah, we did.
But there's hundreds and hundreds of games out there that you can look at and really find the artistic value in it. But I think we put together a small little highlight sheet. And I know you wanted to start off with one of the games that you had mentioned that you had been playing
It's true.
this week.
Yeah, I played through Far Lone Sales, which I picked up on Steam sale because it was there and we had talked about it, and I thought it looked kind of interesting. And I figured I'd just give it a look. I think it was like $12 or something like that. And so I popped it open last night and expected to only be playing it for a little bit just to see what it was about, and then maybe play it some more today. But 3 hours later, I was done with it, and that was incredible. What a wonderful experience. So to give you an idea, it's a 3D side-scrolling adventure game. There's no weapons, there's no combat. There is very limited platforming and some simple puzzle solving, but it's very much it's kind of a guided tour through, or I suppose across a continent. It's very much a journey. It starts off with you getting a vehicle, and then over the course of the game, you upgrade that vehicle. It doesn't make it more powerful, but it does make it faster or more resilient, that kind of thing, more utilitarian. And you visit all these different places that are really interesting and kind of shed insight into the world and maybe what happened and how people tried to deal with it. And I won't ruin the ending, but I was
Okay.
I was satisfied with it. It was desperate but hopeful.
Okay.
And that was kind of the feel of the
cool.
whole game. It was a very desperate but hopeful feel to the whole thing, and it ended beautifully. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great. So I would super highly recommend anybody who wants to get a very kind of engaging visceral experience. Check that out. That was really good.
Okay. And that's
got?
one of the that's a newer game that came out. That came out here
Yeah, it came out in May.
weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel like we got to take it a little back.
Okay.
One of the first games that really hit me as a piece of art was Myst and the Myst series.
Mhm.
It was just at the time just a visually stunning game and an amazing world with a story that was so deep and thought out, and the puzzles were so difficult, and it forced you to really pay attention. And it was the first game that I kind of grew up playing
Mhm.
that I had to stop and think of it and almost as if I was at an art gallery and analyzing like every piece of art and every painting that was in an art gallery. Like I kind of had to look at every single screen in Myst that way. Myst was a first person puzzle game that just knows no bounds. I know they're coming up on their 25th anniversary, and I think there's a Kickstarter to release like everything as one big giant set that's all up to date to be for Windows 10. So that's super cool in my opinion.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Now, was I bummed out when I found out that literally you could beat the game within like 2 minutes of starting the game?
Well,
Because
sure.
the ending.
But I mean,
Yeah,
that
but-
requires advanced knowledge, and Myst is very
Exactly.
much about the journey.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the destination is
So-
weird.
Yeah.
Talking to old men in basements.
Hey, and men trapped in books.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. Strange crystal balls and everything else. I mean, all right.
And lots of journals.
So every book is a novel.
Yeah,
Oh man.
that it was.
Oof. Moving on a little bit. Something else that I so back to my this continually reoccurring theme of I love mods for games. I love it when a community comes together and does some stuff. But there was, I believe it was one guy who did this. He wanted to tell a story, and you know what? I'm entirely wrong. I don't think it was one guy. I think it was a team who worked on this. It was a mod for Half-Life 2 called Dear Esther, and Dear Esther is the story of a man who has been shipwrecked on an island and surviving there for a long time. He is out of medicine and slowly dying from an infection. And as you move through the island, he recounts parts of a letter that he wrote to his deceased wife, Esther. It's an incredible narrative experience. It's when I think of games as art, I think of stuff like this: games that specifically immerse you into an environment or tell you a very poignant story. Typically, something that kind of it makes me feel something, right? Games that make me feel something, those are the ones that I first look to as like this is an artistic experience. And Dear Esther is very much like that. It's a first person adventure. There's no guns, there's no combat, there's no puzzle solving. It's literally just walking. And you can get through it in about an hour, maybe an hour and a half if you're exploring everything. But it's incredible. What am I trying to say with this? There are certain locations in that game, certain things that you look at, that you see, that evoke very specific emotions, and they, as you continue through, sort of connect with each other and with the parts of the letter that the main character is narrating at the time, that sort of brings you into his shoes and helps you to understand what he's feeling and why he's feeling it. And at the end, again, without spoiling anything, just kind of leads you up to the decision that he makes, and really sort of brings it home and makes you wonder if you would choose the same. So I thought it was really cool. It was really good. This game, it's available on Steam and I think a few other like consoles, the definitive edition. If you want to play the original game, you still can. It was initially a mod for Half-Life 2, and that mod version is still free. The definitive editions, what they've done is they updated the graphics, and I think they remastered the voice audio. But you can still go play the original game and get the original experience for free. And I highly recommend playing this game at some point. It's incredible.
Okay. Yeah, I mean a game that really hit home for me story wise. Well, BioShock, and actually the whole BioShock series, gaming series of all
You're
time.
cutting it out again.
Move that a little bit closer. Yeah, so BioShock is it's a first person. If you haven't played it, it's a first person shooter. It's set in this fictional world called Rapture, which is a massively grandly imagined underwater city that's kind of falling apart, and it's in this retro Art Deco style, and it was the vision of a man named Andrew Ryan, and you interact with Ryan the entire time via radio transmission, and he kind of helps, it's almost like
well, Ryan was the villain in the first game, or the supposed villain, and you're working with some other guy.
You're working, yeah, but you're dealing with Andrew Ryan the entire time you're down there.
Oh yeah,
and he's very monologistic. So everything that he talks to you about, it's like grandiose, and it's got delusions of grandeur attached to it, and without going too crazy into it, they did such a good job with the character development that when you come across the twist, it was literally a mind-blowing moment for me.
Yeah,
there are a few things, there are a few movies, there are a few games that have that moment that literally knock you out of your seat or take your breath away. And this game, top absolutely on the video game list, number one top moment. And I feel like they accomplished that again in the third series, BioShock Infinite. Really, really hit home with me as well. The use of Americana, if you would, in the third one, to help build a city in the sky. Really, as a native Philadelphian, where the history of the city is really very similar to the way that city's kind of designed. Obviously not in the sky, but as it would be on the ground. It was right. It really kind of hit home for me, and it hit me in places that I wasn't going to expect. Also, with the use of modernizing things with the historical side. I think there was a moment beginning of the game where you could just walk through the environment, and there was a barbershop quartet doing a version of a Beach Boys song that was absolutely magical, and you can miss it. You have to go a little bit off the beaten path in order to find it, but the series is just full of those kinds of moments. And so I think they did a really, really good job tying art and history together with gaming, and find that perfect balance really between all of it.
Mm-hmm. See, I think when I think about the BioShock series, I fully agree, by the way, that Andrew Ryan's office was number one. If you asked me to name a moment in gaming that was just super impactful, that was just whoa, Andrew Ryan's office number one, easily. Yeah. But I think for me, the artistic value of the BioShock series came very much from the environment and from the characters you interact with. And I think the first one was better than the second in that aspect. And
I kind of feel like 2 was a throwaway.
A little. They tried. It was fun to play. It was more about the gameplay, I think. So it's interesting to me that you talk about the historical perspective from BioShock 3 or Infinite, because I never looked at it from that point of view. And from that perspective, it's really, there's a lot there. I tend to always look at things from this storyline environment perspective, and I thought the environment of Infinite was cool, but I thought its story was absolute garbage. I think maybe not the whole thing. I think mostly it was good, and then they just kind of went crazy with it at the end and just did ridiculous things and threw it out the window. But I think by and large that kind of soured me on it a little bit. But from the perspective you brought up as a historical perspective, I really never looked at it that way, because I don't know much about Philadelphia or anything else. So I guess you'd have a unique insight into that.
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of had, and I wouldn't say Philadelphia, but that whole region, I would say from Virginia up to Boston, 1700, late 1700 colonial time, really had that kind of vibe to it. And then, kind of it kind of built off of that as its time frame, and then kind of hit like early like I would say early like 1920s New York City at times, like immigration wise. Like I think there was like a whole beach that just kind of knocked me right back into like what Coney Island would have been like back in the day. Like so they did their research and trying to historically make places feel fairly accurate, or give you the sense that you've been there before without actually having, creating a brand new environment.
Yeah, creating a strange sense of deja vu.
Part of it. And for me, honestly, like I don't necessarily always look into story to kind of for me to justify it as art. Another like a game that I think really kind of exemplifies that is Mirror's Edge. The story on that was pretty non-existent.
Yeah, pretty much.
But it was an absolutely gorgeous game.
Yeah,
their use of color and the color palette choices that they did, like it was just it was a visually striking game that forced you to kind of look at the whole, like you couldn't get tunnel vision in that game. You were moving fast. Mirror's Edge was a first-person perspective parkour movement game, and it really kind of appealed. Yeah, it kind of it really appealed. It was appealing to me like in the speedrunning situation before I even knew I was interested in speedrunning, because the whole game is pretty much based on trying to find the best and most direct. How fast do you get there? What's the most direct route, or even like. Or if you wanted to go slower, finding a really cool route that people wouldn't expect to get from point A to point B. And that's kind of like what the fundamentals of parkour really is. Yeah. Is trying to figure out and like all that kind of stuff. So they did a great job like implementing that in to the point where you could even beat the game without firing a single bullet. Yeah. Which I always thought was cool. Mm-hmm. But really where that game stood out was the motion blur that they used when you would pick up speed. You would kind of simulate the tunnel vision, but the second that you got out of it, like the world opened right back up, and it almost felt like you saw more after those moments than you normally did because of the use of the color palette. And I really appreciated the artistic value of that game. I mean, granted, the story was throwaway, and Mirror's Edge 2 did the same thing, kind of, but at that point, it was a little past its prime when it came to that.
And just because I want to be clear about it, I wasn't attempting to say that story is the only thing that I look at.
Oh no, but that's the thing about art.
Existing and like, bad one will take away. Like I would prefer there to be none as opposed to there being a bad one, which just,
right. Anyway. No, absolutely, and that's the thing about art is that you can look at it from whatever angle you want, and there's no wrong opinion on it. Two people can look at the same piece of the same painting and pull two completely different things from it. So, and that's what makes this topic a really interesting one to talk about, because it really gets to the core about who you and I kind of are as people and how we value art in our own perspectives. So, like for me personally, I love pixel art. I love 18-bit, 16 or 8-bit, 16-bit. 32-bit pixel art. We use pixel art for our intro and our outro. Yep. For the longest time, I've always had pixel art as my computer desktop backgrounds. And one of my favorite games, and I think one of the most gorgeous games in the pixel art world that I've seen, was a game called Fez. And this game Fez really had a lot of hype behind it. It's an interesting story how this game came to be, and it was so interesting they actually made a documentary about it. It was called Indie Game the Movie, which released back in 2012.
I remember that.
It was. So Fez was originally announced back in 2007 and was released about 5 years later. The beautiful thing about this game is that it's a pixel art game, but it's a four-sided 3D space with each side in 2D, and you kind of rotate as you walk off one side of the screen. The whole thing rotates, and then you're on the next side.
Okay.
And it's a puzzle game, and you go up and around. You back.
So you're playing on a cube.
Okay. Absolutely. But the world is so large, and everything about it is like all of the environments that you go through are just gorgeous and beautifully designed. The game's like $9 or $10 Steam or on Xbox Live, and I think honestly, it's probably one of the best pixel art games kind of ever invented. And it was like so there are monster games out there like Monument Valley that have straight out said that Fez is the reason why this game exists today. So if you like, if you're into that, like the mobile, and I think Fez is even available on iOS and Android now too.
At this point, I'm sure it was a very popular game. Yeah,
it was, and surprisingly, it wasn't as popular as people. I think it only sold 10,000 copies of the first day, and I think it like at the end of the first year it was out, only had sold 200,000 copies. Like it hit 1 million copies like way later in like 2013, but it did end up selling over 1 million copies. So it was like one of those like it was hyped super much, and then it kind of like dissipated because it took forever. It was 2 guys that worked on it. It was Phil Fish and then somebody else whose name I can't remember.
Okay.
And I think actually Phil Fish was at like in 2013 or 2012 was like one of like Twitter's top 50 most influential people because of the way that he used Twitter, and he was like he was pretty much a giant asshole to everybody on Twitter. Like he released his game and then couldn't take any criticism for it. So if anybody said anything bad, like he would block you or fucking say really nasty shit back to you on Twitter. It was like really weird. But you can always look into that. But back to what it was really, really good with was the pixel art style, how the audio soundtrack really played with that as well. Like it felt like one big giant score. And not like as you transition through everything just naturally flowed together. But you could break it down into individual songs. But the whole experience from top to bottom, I think I never unlocked everything, and I still put like I think 20 or 30 hours into this game.
Okay.
So there's plenty there. Excuse me.
Sounds good. Well, the last
and then
one,
I think
I got it. Yeah.
I was going to intro it, but if you know, I mean, you've played through this.
Yeah, I've played this game. The last one we were introing is the Stanley Parable, which is sort of an interesting game. You start off in an office at work, and you can finish the game in like 10 minutes, but it's different every time you play it. And it sort of opens up a little bit more and allows you to find a new path every time you play something, and you wonder, well, what if I did this, or what if I didn't do this, or what if I obeyed or disobeyed or went left instead of right? And so you can finish the game in like hundreds of different ways, and they were all like interesting. And each time that you finished the game, it sort of led you into this, well, what if I tried other situation that brings you into how could I have done X, Y, Z, and it was really cool. It was
It was a very narrative game, and I think that was the beautiful part about the game was how they handled the dialogue between you and the narrator, which was like that third party voice of God that was kind of just like dictating what you were doing as you were doing it, and that was the beautiful thing about like the next run throughs, because like every run through that you did after that, like the narration would be the same, but then you would pick a different choice. Then the narrator would be like, oh no, now I got to go over here because you're doing this. And then I got to try to get you, it would be really good if you went back this way. And it would just do that over and over and over again for hundreds and hundreds of combinations. And that's where I really feel like the artistic value in this game kind of came back around. It wasn't like, it's abstract in the sense that you're playing the same game over and over and over and over again, but the sum of its parts just becomes such a ridiculous and beautiful thing. Like it's not a game that you play once and you put it away. You play it 50 to 60 times, and then maybe you get bored with it, but then you usually kind of get that urge to go back, because there's always that like you said, like that what if feeling, like what if I did this instead of that. And like a lot of the outcomes are pretty comical, so it's like they did a really good job of kind of tying all that together too.
Yeah, I remember there's one part where you disobey the narrator like 3 or 4 times. He's like, go left, and you go right, and he's like trying to lead you somewhere, and you just don't ever do anything, and finally he just gets pissed, and he's like, look, if you just go back this way, it'll be fine. And if you just turn around and go back and start obeying him at that point, he's like, huh, wow, I never thought saying please would work. Well, all right, then here we go.
Yeah.
And he just like
Right. So yeah, I mean it's a fun game. It's been out for a while too. I believe actually it was done as a mod. Actually, it was a mod for. I actually want to say it was a mod
No,
for Half-Life
I think it
2.
was an original. I think it was an original release. I believe it was
No,
made
it
on the
got
Source engine.
It got a re-release because somebody else, some big name designer, like game designer, was super interested in it. It was made in the Source engine. Excuse me. As I look up the wiki here. Yeah, he had made it with help from wikis and forums from the Source development kit. And he taught himself the fundamentals. And then William Pug, who had a lot of experience creating environments in the Source engine, was like, I'm super impressed with this. Let me help you out. And then they kind of improved it.
Okay.
And I think it took like another couple of 2 years from when Pug came on.
Gotcha.
But I think the Source engine was really just a mod of Half-Life 2, really. It was just kind of like the building blocks of what Half-Life 2 was made out of.
Yeah, well, I mean, they wrote Source engine so they could write Half-Life 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's about all I got on the list there.
I mean, I think we've clearly established that games can be art and can do it very well.
Yeah.
Well, I think we can go ahead and wrap it up. We have another segment we could talk about another time, and maybe we'll do that next week.
Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out and hanging out. We are the Two Dudes One Up Gaming Podcast. You can follow us here on the Instagram and the Twitter. It's at Two Dudes One Up, the number 2 dudes, number 1 up. And you can also follow us on the Discord. The link is down below.
Discord.
I've been trying to be I've been trying to be a little bit more active on the Discord. So come on in and let's talk about some stuff. I know I put a lot of information about the new Overwatch character up there this week. I put I know Fortnite season 5 is coming around soon. The rocket got launched. I put the reaction video for that actually had a really good camera angle of the rocket launch going on. That's up in there. But if there's anything that you guys want to talk about, or if you have anything that you want us to talk about, feel free. Just send us a message, put it in the chat.
Yeah.
We'll hang out and we'll see if we can make it happen.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah,
love to include. So
cool.
All right.
Well, we want to thank you once again for coming out. You can follow this guy up here in the Average Goatee. Go follow him on twitch.tv/Average Goatee.
Yep.
You can follow me. I'm Stunt Mustard. I've been streaming a little bit more lately. You can follow me at twitch.tv/Stunt Mustard.
Yeah. He was playing Overwatch yesterday, and I'll be playing probably some more FAR this week.
Nice.
So, actually, tell you what, let's do our outro, and then we'll say a thing, and then we'll end. So,
sure.
Thank you guys for hanging out. Hope you guys had a great time, and we'll catch you on the flip side.
Yeah, happy gaming, everybody.